Ever wondered why your Dynamics 365 dashboards behave differently in Teams compared to SharePoint? If your field teams and execs keep asking for just one place to see all the data, you're not alone. Today, we're putting Power BI, Dataverse, Teams, and SharePoint head to head. Which setup actually delivers the best experience, and which one quietly causes more headaches than it solves? Stay tuned. This comparison could save you hours on your next rollout. When just embedded fails, why Teams and SharePoint aren't the same. If you've ever tried to just embed a Dynamics 365 dashboard, slapping it into both Teams and SharePoint, expecting it to work everywhere, you already know it's never that smooth. On the surface, it feels obvious. Pick one spot, add your Power BI or Dataverse visuals, and call it a day. But it doesn't take long to spot the cracks. Organizations crave a single source of truth, but the reality is that Teams and SharePoint treat your dashboards in their own unique ways. The platforms look similar on paper, but their rules are different enough to trip up even seasoned IT admins. One side leans hard into active team-based conversations, live chats, and mobile alerts. The other wants rich visuals, polished layouts for company portals, and something leadership can print and stick in a meeting folder. Picture what happens when you squish everyone's needs into a single embedded dashboard. The field sales team fires up Teams on their phones during a customer visit. They're expecting to see the latest numbers, the deals closed, the inventory changes from this morning, and that all-important quarterly performance. Instead, there's a mismatch. Sometimes the data lags by a few hours. They wonder if something broke. Meanwhile, the executive group pulls up a glossy SharePoint page with up-to-date charts. Looks slick, but when someone wants to click into that sales region for more details, drill-down features don't work. They're stuck with static views. This isn't just a technical footnote. Microsoft's own documentation will trip you up if you gloss over the separation. In Teams, embedding a Power BI dashboard often means you get a focused set of features baked in. It feels streamlined because Teams wants to keep you inside that chat-driven workflow, open a tab, see the data, get moving. On the other hand, SharePoint's web parts promise deeper design options, but with those options come limits. Not every interactive feature makes the leap from Power BI to SharePoint, despite the shared Microsoft DNA. Try exporting that beautiful chart. Sometimes you can, sometimes you can't, depending on the integration method you picked. I've seen organizations bump into the same roadblock over and over. Take a mid-sized manufacturing company that wanted to unify numbers across their operations team and the leadership suite. They shoehorned one dashboard into both platforms and figured they were future-proofed. Instead, the support desk lit up with tickets. Sales staff complained about data delays in Teams. Managers grumbled about dashboards that looked fine in SharePoint but didn't let them access the numbers that mattered most to their teams. Even the IT department got caught in the crossfire, fielding daily emails asking, "Why is my data missing here but not there?" If you follow the MVP conversations, the folks living and breathing Microsoft 365 every day, the split in philosophy comes up again and again. Teams is designed for collaboration. It wants to be a place where quick decisions and constant updates flow. SharePoint is engineered for publishing, more structured and designed, focused on long-term info sharing. That difference shapes everything about your dashboard. In Teams, it's all about just-in-time updates, real-time context, and a workflow that fits into chats or mobile notifications. Drop that same dashboard into SharePoint and suddenly the need shifts to presentation, formal reporting, and a polished look for external reviews. Choosing where your dashboard lives isn't a minor technical detail. It sets the tone, how your organization interacts with numbers, what kind of conversations take place, and whether users trust the information at all. The platform dictates not only how data appears, but also if end users trust its accuracy and usability. Users get savvy fast. If a field rep keeps seeing yesterday's info or a CFO can't get a proper export, it only takes a few incidents before trust breaks down and back-channel spreadsheets reappear. There's a quiet but real risk here. When the dashboard doesn't fit the workflow, people revert back to old habits. That under-the-radar Excel sheet makes a stealth comeback. Department heads start requesting manual reports again, just to double-check the official numbers. And worst of all, you never hear about the trust issues until things are already off the rails. Microsoft's official documentation points out plenty of gotchas. Modern web parts in SharePoint may support Power BI embedding, but not always with the same real-time data or interactive filtering. Teams tabs can auto-refresh, but embedding anything complex or interactive sometimes breaks if licensing isn't set up exactly right, or if a Teams update nudges permissions unexpectedly. The quirks stack up fast, and the support requests follow. So you're left with a decision that's more strategic than technical. Are you optimizing for hands-on live collaboration or for high-visibility publishing where form beats function? The answer shifts what success even looks like. If you want your dashboard rollout to stick, you'll end up tweaking not just visuals, but the whole relationship between people, data, and the place they see it. And that alone answers why you can't just copy and paste your dashboard everywhere and expect it to work. What it all boils down to is this. The place you embed your dashboard actively shapes the way your teams use, understand, and trust the numbers. If adoption falls apart, it's rarely the dashboard itself to blame, but the disconnect between data, platform, and audience. And let's be honest, nobody wants to be the one explaining why the numbers on Teams don't match what's on SharePoint. Data freshness often causes the loudest complaints, like when last week's results suddenly appear in today's dashboard. So let's look at why real-time access isn't as easy as clicking refresh. Live data or yesterday's news, data freshness and security in the real world. We've all sat in meetings where someone asks, why is this number different from the last report? It almost always comes down to one thing: data freshness. No matter how shiny your dashboard looks, if it's not up to date, trust evaporates, especially for the field teams who depend on Teams during fast-moving situations. Their expectation is simple. They open Teams, click a tab, and want today's information without lag or excuses. The executives in SharePoint care about accuracy too, but their stakes tend to be higher. A board decision based on old numbers can have much bigger consequences than a missed sales update. Yet, the irony is, both groups think they're looking at the same source of truth. They aren't. Let's walk through a day in the life for teams that live and breathe these dashboards. Take a logistics crew running daily deliveries across multiple cities. The dashboard in Teams shows routes, drop-offs, and status. One driver pulls up their phone at 9 a.m. expecting a live update on urgent package reroutes from overnight. Instead, the numbers look wrong. Yesterday's stuck packages haven't cleared, and today's high-priority orders aren't showing up at all. The supervisor checks the same dashboard, but on desktop, and sees a similar lag. Meanwhile, on SharePoint, leadership has a stylish board report. It auto-refreshes every night, so at 8 a.m., all the data is technically fresh as of last midnight. If there's a hiccup or a fleet issue pops up after hours, it's missing from the morning report. It's easy for key patterns or urgent changes to slip through the cracks because the updates just aren't fast enough for real-time action. It's tempting to believe that embedding Power BI everywhere solves the problem, but the devil's in the details and in the licensing. Direct Power BI embeds in Teams can push near-instant updates as long as pro licenses are assigned and your dataset's refresh schedule checks out. If the company starts running low on those licenses or there's a last-minute user swap, dashboards won't update. They may not even display at all. It gets even trickier when you try to use Dataverse for Teams as a solution. Dataverse is great for providing a centralized place for Dynamics data inside Teams, but it's tightly scoped. Not every table or real-time workflow shows up, and data refreshes happen on its own, sometimes unpredictable schedule. SharePoint's web parts, they rely on dataset refreshes set by admins, often just a nightly update because frequent refreshes require manual setup and more performance overhead. If you poke around on Microsoft's documentation or community forums, you'll spot a common pattern. Users sound off about dashboards that lag behind or interactive features that suddenly freeze with no error message except data could not be loaded. Complex Dynamics implementations with multiple related tables make things even slower. There's a reason refresh delay is one of the most searched complaints for both Power BI and SharePoint integrations. Anytime you add new relationships, tie in custom Power Automate flows, or build DAX calculations that reference multiple sources, the risk of stale or blank data just increases. Community answers often amount to check your refresh schedule, upgrade licensing, and hope it resolves. That's not exactly comfort for a field team looking for numbers on the fly. Organizations run into the same headaches even when they invest in both platforms. Take the case of an energy company juggling dispatch operations across Teams and financial reporting in SharePoint. For Teams, they went all in on live Power BI integration and saw real benefits. Dispatchers could spot out-of-spec readings and safety flags faster than before. but the cost crept up quickly. They had to expand their Power BI Pro licensing pool, which blew past their initial budget. On the SharePoint side, leadership got improved nightly snapshots and digital PDFs for monthly board meetings, but lost out on real-time risk alerts that could have prevented a few near misses. The technical win turned into a budgeting puzzle, with executives debating whether to keep everyone on full licenses just for a few extra hours of speed. The story gets more complicated once security enters the mix. Microsoft layers in authentication behind every dashboard connection, so a user's permissions in Teams might not match what's set in SharePoint, especially if the IT department recently tweaked group memberships or conditional access rules. Here's the kicker. If those permissions don't sync across platforms, users might see a blank dashboard or get locked out of the numbers entirely. There's rarely a warning message. It just silently fails, leaving people guessing whether something's wrong with the data or their own access. Even worse, some orgs start loosening restrictions just to fix dashboards, which opens up big security holes, the kind nobody wants to find during an audit. If you're trying to pick a side, it often feels like a choice between speed and safety. Instant data in Teams usually means more user management and higher licensing costs, but leads to quick, informed decisions. Stricter security and stable refresh schedules in SharePoint give executives peace of mind, but risk lagging behind the pace of day-to-day business. The irony is the fastest dashboard can become a security headache, while the most secure solution risks putting people a day behind reality. Even with perfectly up-to-date data, a dashboard can still crash and burn if users can't figure it out or run into obstacles. We'll dig into those hidden usability costs because nothing says project fail like a fancy dashboard that nobody actually wants to use. Licensing, costs, and user experience, the unseen trade-offs. If you've ever priced out Power BI for a simple dashboard rollout, you probably know that familiar feeling when the real numbers come in. What starts as a straightforward project, something that you expect to just work out of the box, quickly turns into invoice surprises and licensing gotchas you didn't plan for. The licensing menu, Power BI Pro, Power BI Premium, Dataverse for Teams, is like its own little maze, and even small tweaks in your design can send costs sideways. The main issue, it's all happening behind the scenes, but your choices there shape what you can show and who actually gets to see it. Let's start with field users in Teams. Microsoft markets Teams as the universal window into company data for everyone, not just folks at a desk. So it seems reasonable to expect you can plop your dashboard right into a Teams tab and let anyone view live data. The catch is anyone only applies if they have the right Power BI Pro license. Plenty of companies set up their dashboards, run a pilot with a few licenses, then discover at go live that suddenly dozens or hundreds of users can't access the reports. We've all seen frantic emails from sales or service teams the morning after a license audit. Sometimes the only thing standing between a regional sales manager and real-time KPIs is a licensing line item that nobody caught in budgeting. The situation flips in SharePoint. Here, you might assume things will be easier, since it feels like more of a publishing platform than a day-to-day workspace. SharePoint can be configured to show striking dashboards embedded as web parts on department pages or executive sites. Out of the box, everything looks neat and centralized. But to support interactive filtering, drill-throughs, or the ability to slice and dice data on demand, you end up wrangling not just Power BI, but also the permissions model, cross-platform authentication, and in some cases, premium workspace capacity. You can build a polished report page in SharePoint only to have users complain that nothing happens when they click. That's not a technical glitch, it's usually admin overhead that went uncalculated. A real-world story drives this home. A regional sales team at a distribution company had invested in analytics to visualize territory performances. Eager to help the team on the ground, their IT group embedded a sales dashboard straight into Teams and rolled it out. Everything ran smoothly for about a week until new hires joined, and suddenly half the group was met with access errors. Their licenses hadn't been updated, and the dashboard was effectively useless during one of the quarter's busiest pushes. Meanwhile, a senior executive at headquarters sitting in front of their SharePoint portal had no trouble accessing summary visuals. But when they tried to get up-to-the-minute results for a board meeting, it became clear the underlying report only synced overnight, so the freshest data wasn't there. This is a classic case of platforms working as designed but failing user expectations. What complicates things further is that Microsoft's official cost calculators focus on the basics: number of users, baseline tier, maybe a nod to premium features. What they don't include is the extra time you sink into assigning, tracking, and updating licenses, or the hours spent troubleshooting permissions when a connector fails between Power BI and Dataverse simply because an account was missed in a bulk import. It also doesn't predict the developer hours for building those long requested drill-through pages or reconfiguring guest access for external partners. If you ask anyone managing these rollouts, they'll tell you the admin costs creep up quietly but persistently. Some consultants, the folks who live and breathe Power Platform integrations, are quick to point out that a hybrid approach often makes more sense. That might mean putting simplified, always-on metrics in Teams for mobile users while keeping heavier, more interactive analytics behind SharePoint, or even a dedicated Power BI app workspace for Power users and execs. You don't need every feature to be everywhere. You need the right features for the right people. The trick is balancing the upfront investment with the risk of people going back to backdoor tools because the official dashboards are too expensive or too clumsy to use. Now, take healthcare. A mid-sized clinic network spent months perfecting dashboards that piped clinical KPIs into Teams for frontline managers. But when they scaled the solution, monthly Power BI licensing overtook their entire Dynamics subscription just to get everyone real-time numbers. They had to dial back plans, segment access, and rethink which teams really needed constant live analytics and which could get by with scheduled updates and a lighter dashboard footprint. There's always a temptation to build for every possible use case, but you pay for every choice in administration and in dollars. Are you supporting a small circle of data-savvy analysts or an entire sales force out in the field checking mobile devices between client visits? The answer will guide not just your technical setup, but also how much budget and staff time you'll need to keep your dashboards running. Cost effectiveness isn't always about picking Microsoft's officially recommended route. Sometimes it's about limiting scope or customizing access to fit real workflows. Unseen costs are usually less about dollars and more about user frustration, lost productivity, or too many emails asking for that one chart to be emailed as a PDF. But no matter how carefully you plan for licenses or weigh up admin costs, the project can still stall if your dashboards struggle in the hands of those who need them most, users working on the move, often in less than ideal conditions. That's where the true test comes. Dashboards that hold up in the field, on mobile, or even when the network drops out. Mobile, offline, and complex data, where integrations sink or swim. It's one thing to build a dashboard that pops on a widescreen monitor, another thing entirely when your audience is trying to get answers from the back of a truck, in a factory, or during a surprise Wi-Fi outage at a client site. The reality is most of the challenges show up not during launch demos, but the first time someone walks out onto the floor and tries to get the numbers they actually need right now. The way field teams interact with dashboards and handle complex data in environments with flaky connectivity is where the gap between the promise of integration and its everyday reality gets exposed. Let's start with Teams and mobile use. The Teams mobile app will let users open dashboards, tabs, and even kick off conversations in response to what they see. If your goal is giving sales reps, site engineers, or techs information on the go, Teams feels like the logical fit. But live dashboards, those linked by Power BI or piped in via Dataverse, depend entirely on constant connectivity. Lose your signal in the warehouse, elevator, or while driving between appointments, and the dashboard disappears or freezes on the last cached image. You might not get any warning, just a loading spinner instead of this morning's figures. For most field staff, data that's a few hours old can mean second-guessing decisions or scrambling to verify details with quick phone calls and old-school spreadsheets. Meanwhile, SharePoint likes to play it safe and stable. Executives routinely pull up dashboards during meetings, expecting everything to be polished and press-ready. SharePoint can cache pages so that dashboards load even if Wi-Fi drops out mid-presentation. That sounds like a win until you layer in real business data. When dashboards include custom relationships or pull from advanced Dynamics entities, cache and offline features only get you a static snapshot. Executives who want to actually slice, drill, or get deeper by clicking on a custom entity often hit a dead end. The visuals look impressive, but interactive features tend to break, especially with mobile browsers or iPads. That's before you even add in guest logins or hybrid identities, where permissions play a part in whether any sensitive data shows up at all. Then there's Dataverse for Teams. Microsoft pitches it as a way to surface Dynamics data in a more Teams-friendly and resource-light way. In controlled circumstances with basic tables and modest data volumes, it actually does the trick. Quick, lightweight, gets the essentials onto mobile. But go beyond the basics, connect custom tables, or try to visualize relationships that span several business units, and quirks start piling up. Field staff end up toggling between different apps, or worse, waiting for the dashboard to catch up. For complex scenarios, reliability can't keep up with what business users expect from classic Dynamics dashboards. There's no shortage of real-world examples where integration struggles show up at the worst possible times. Picture a safety engineer checking compliance metrics on site only to lose cell service right before pulling up the latest incident data. They don't see updated numbers, only last week's snapshot. Or think about a utility company dealing with storm recovery. The team in the field reports that the mobile dashboards they rely on for outage data don't refresh until they're back in network coverage. Executives, meanwhile, are sitting in the headquarters meeting room trying to drill into customer affected areas from a SharePoint dashboard, only to hit broken links or no data available placeholders when they click on anything remotely custom. If you pull up Microsoft's tech community forums, you'll find plenty of complaints that sound like this. Field users frustrated, dashboard not available offline, or custom Dynamics entity won't load on iPad SharePoint page. The problem isn't the dashboards themselves. It's the disconnect between what's technically supported and what people actually face every day. The more organizations lean into automation, the more obvious these limitations become. Reports of failed sync, missed updates, or even data security slip-ups linked to the wrong permissions keep cropping up, especially where mobile and offline requirements haven't made it into the initial requirements list. A utility company we worked with went through this firsthand. Their engineering crews needed live equipment data in case of network outages on remote job sites. The first version of their dashboard, built for desktop Power BI and pushed into both Teams and SharePoint, looked great but was useless when crews left LTE coverage. They reworked the entire thing with lightweight, mobile-first reports for day-to-day use, reserving the full fat analytics for when engineers were back at base with a stable connection. It wasn't about fancy analytics, it was about what users could actually count on when it mattered. That's the pattern we're seeing more often. Some organizations split the difference, designing pared-back dashboards for mobile, just the essentials, small visuals, easy navigation, and hold back the deep dive analytics for desktop-only SharePoint or Power BI workspaces. The trade-off is clear. Everyone gets something usable, even if that means a little less wow factor out in the field. Ultimately, all the back-end integration in the world can't patch a poor user experience for someone on the road, in the plant, or working from a customer's lobby. The best dashboard is always the one that delivers what's needed, when it's needed, where the user is, whether that's live in the office, on a phone in the middle of nowhere, or printed off before heading to a site visit. It's a sobering reminder that there's real-world risk in taking vendor promises at face value. So after looking at how Teams, SharePoint, Power BI, and Dataverse behave under pressure, the only question left is which setup actually wins for your own reality. If your dashboard looks great, but no one trusts it, or worse, no one uses it, you haven't fixed anything. The features only matter if they solve an actual problem for your people. So before you embed another dashboard, stop and ask who's actually using it, what device they'll be on, and which data points let them make better decisions. That's what drives adoption. Skip the checklist mentality. Treat dashboards as tools for your teams, not for compliance. Want more on what works and what quietly flops in Microsoft integrations? Hit subscribe and share your own stories in the comments.